Since the central character of Jim Lehrer's new novel, Oh Johnny, is a Marine who has a very special experience in Wichita during World War II, you may not be too surprised to learn that Johnny's creator was born in Wichita and was also a Marine. As for how much of what happens to Johnny, whether or not that actually happened to Jim Lehrer, we'll let him answer, though I suspect he'll need a little bit of fictional license. Those of you who've read the book know that there is a quite an interesting little seduction that goes on in Wichita. This is Jim's 19th novel, an amazing accomplishment for a man as celebrated and as busy as he is. Most of us are aware of him as a writer in another area, television news. That's because Jim is one of America's best known, most honored, and finest broadcast journalists. He began as a print journalist in Dallas, but he's been in television for about 40 years. And he's partnered in one way or another with Robert McNeil almost that long. They began working together covering the Senate's Watergate hearings in 1973, for which they won an Emmy Award. The McNeil-Lehrer report on PBS received more than 30 major awards for journalistic excellence over a period of some 20 years. Since 1996, as I think most of you know, Jim has hosted the News Hour with Jim Lehrer on PBS, and Robert McNeil has served as a partner largely on the production end. His honors are many. They include the National Humanities Medal, which was presented to him by President Clinton, a prestigious Peabody Award, induction into the Television Hall of Fame, election as a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and yet another Emmy Award. Since 1988, he has served as moderator of 11 of the nationally televised debates among presidential and vice presidential candidates, including the first debate between Barack Obama and John McCain last fall. As a broadcast journalist, he upholds those values that Fox News talks about but doesn't really uphold. And he adds a quality that Fox doesn't possess either, and that's smarts. And did I mention 19 novels, 2 memoirs, 3 plays? He's a very, very busy man, and we are truly honored and happy to have him with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming the wonderful Jim Lehrer.
Usually I'm tempted after an introduction like that just to say thank you and sit down. And what more is there to say? I am delighted to be here. I've been to Atlanta many times, and I've been here many times on book tour and on various for various other reasons, including a political convention a few cycles ago, and it's always a pleasure. And I had not been to Decatur, and I just saw the wonderful things you're doing with your town, and I congratulate you, those of you who live in Decatur, and those of you who come to Decatur. You're clearly in a very special place, and I know that, and I'm delighted to share this with you. A couple of things that what I want to do here is talk a little bit, and then throw it open to you all for questions. But let me give you the guidelines for the questions now, so if you're thinking of the question, you won't waste any time, okay? Number one is this is a literary event. Number two, I am not a pundit. In other words, I don't give my opinions about much of anything, as you all know. And number three, I don't handle criticism well. But ask me anything. I know that many of you, maybe most of you, think of me as this TV wah-wah who also writes novels on the side. The fact of the matter is, I I decided to be a writer when I was 16, 17 years old. I lived in a place called Beaumont. Anybody here know where Beaumont, Texas is? Hey, terrific. Falling on hard times, by the way. If you haven't been there, and a lot of oil refineries, and it goes a lot up and down and all that sort of stuff. But I had one of those magic experiences that I'll bet you a lot of you all share, where a teacher played an important role in your life at a particularly important time. I had wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I was going to play shortstop for the then Brooklyn Dodgers. I was going to take Pee Wee Reese's place. Some of you are old enough to remember Pee Wee Reese. Well, Pee Wee didn't know I was going to take his place, and at any rate, the coach at the high school, where I was going to high school in Beaumont, said, "Jimmy, I think you better think of something else. I don't think you're going to make it." And one interesting thing that happened was that while I was playing baseball, sports writers for our newspapers in Beaumont used to come to our games. I got to know some of those guys. I thought they were terrific, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll just be a sports writer. And that would be terrific, be paid money, travel around, go to all kinds of ball games and write stories and all that. And at that same moment, I mean, within a day or two, as I recall, the way I remember it, let's put it that way, I had written a theme, what they used to call themes, now they call papers. I had written a theme for high school English for an English class, and it was about Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. I do remember that. And the teacher, who was brilliant, gave me an A for the paper. But most importantly, she wrote up in the left-hand corner, "Jimmy, you're a very good writer." All right, these two events came together at the same time. I told my mother, "Mom, I'm going to be a writer." And she patted me on the head and said, "That's great, son. Go." And the very next day, I went back to my high school, found the faculty advisor to the newspaper, and said essentially, "Here I am." And, the advisor was not terribly impressed at the time, but for all practical purposes, that's what I've been doing ever since. Except for the 3 years I was in the Marine Corps, the 1950s, I've been writing both fiction and nonfiction. Trust me, not at the same time. I alternate back and forth. But it is putting words together in some kind of form has been essentially what I've spent my life doing. And the joy of it, think about it. And you know, the worst thing for me, and I bet you all share this, worst thing is to be in the company of somebody who's fortunate and won't admit it or doesn't know it. You're not in the company of such a person here tonight. And think about this. I decided when I was 16 years old what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a writer of fiction, and I wanted to be a journalist. They didn't call them that at that time. They called them reporters and newspapermen and things like that. But here I am, all these years later, doing exactly what I set out to do when I was 16, 17 years old. And setting out to do that is an interesting thing, at least it is to me. I was talking to some people earlier today about this. There used to be, the route to fiction writing used to be newspaper. It was the Hemingway. I'm from the Hemingway generation. Hemingway said, "You want to be a writer, get a job on a newspaper. It'll teach you how to deal with the English language on a regular basis in a semi-coherent way. It will alert you to interesting people and interesting things, interesting events that you can later use as a writer." Well, I bought into that big time. And at that time, this was before there were a lot of creative writing classes and masters of fine arts. The route to writing began in newsrooms. And when I started as a newspaper man in 1959 in Dallas, Texas, everybody in our newsroom was talking about, mostly talking rather than doing it, but talking about writing novels, writing short stories, writing plays, and all of that. And the competition was about who could write the best.